the club, plays macros. What's back though? It's a Louis back though.
Holy shit, I rolled the split, choke hold the beat. Flip that, then I sold the shit. Got my wrist on spray, now it's cold as shit. Only you boneless, if you got a bone to pick, I tell you go to strip. While I pull up in that stolen whip, while snacking and I pulling tricks. The only rabbit here is me, I hop on any beat and treat it like Play-Doh and mold this shit. Bitch, I promise.
Yo, it's Zero, and this is What If Naruto Was Raised by Yoriichi, Part 7. Thank you guys for so much support, and remember to like the video and subscribe if you're new. Let's get started with the time skip into the Naruto timeline. During this time, none of the evil samurai from their organization made a move or an attack. This was strange, so while the samurai were training and protecting, they were also waiting. We now go to the day of a Hashira meeting. Not all the Hashira were there. The only ones who were there so far were Giyu and Rengoku. During the time skip, Taiyo's friends were given the rank of those who were right under Hashira, but they were not quite there yet. While they waited, Taiyo then appeared. As he sat down, he looked around for his father, who should have been sitting next to the master of the organization, but he couldn't find him. This is when Rengoku whispered, "Your father went with the rest of your family to gather supplies down the mountain." Taiyo nodded a sigh of relief. The master then walked out further into the light so that everyone could now see him. This is when Rengoku and all the other people that were there stood up. After this, Rengoku and Taiyo were the first to make a move, protecting the leader of their organization from two evil samurai. Taiyo, however, didn't have his blade, so he had covered his hands in flames to protect himself and to block the incoming attack. He then broke the blade from the samurai. Inosuke was hit by a kunai in his shoulder with a tag on it. Tanjiro grabbed that kunai and threw it up in the air, seeing an explosion happen. This is when on all the buildings they were surrounded. Taiyo smiled, hearing a familiar voice coming from down the mountain. Taiyo heard the scream of his blacksmith, who threw his new sword. Taiyo grabbed it, and then his blacksmith poofed, revealing he was a clone. Taiyo smiled, yelling out, "Listen to me. We may not have all the Hashira here. In fact, there are only 3 of us. But those who are here, lend me your strength and fight with me till the end." Everyone yells out, and Taiyo holds his new blade in the sun as it turns completely black. Good. That means this one can withstand this technique. Rengoku, right. The fire and sun Hashira then stood together, but they quickly noticed a man in the sky. "Everyone, come to us." As everyone stood back to back, Rengoku and Taiyo began to breathe. As the Diva Path launches an attack, Taiyo and Rengoku simultaneously created a flame tornado that was large and hot. It was not only able to block the attack, but burn the Diva Path to nothing. Taiyo looked around, and this is when he saw his uncle, who rushed at Nezuko. But this time, it was Tanjiro and Nezuko who blocked the attack. That's right, they're strong now. I need to focus on him. Taiyo then looked in the direction of a pale samurai who wore all black. Taiyo transformed into a 3-tailed state. "What's your name?" "My name is one of that was lost to the Hashira. Muzan, the pillar of death." Muzan began to breathe, and all the things around him began to die. As he swung his blade, a black aura came off of it and launched at Taiyo. Taiyo blocked the attack, rushing forward. Breath of the Sun, 14th form, 9-tailed blaze. As Taiyo began to move faster and faster, Muzan somehow kept up, and this is when he started a conversation with our hero. "Taiyo, do you know why I can keep up with you?" "Shut up." He then quickly changes his form. Breath of the Sun, 13th form, 2nd stage. Taiyo swung his blade using the 13 forms, but his movements after each strike became faster and faster, pushing his body to its absolute limit until he landed a cut on Muzan's neck. Then he finished him off by cutting off his head. Taiyo then breathed a sigh of relief. It's over. You thought that could kill me? This is when Taiyo looks down to see the head of Muzan talking. In this story, Muzan was actually the elder brother of Hidan from the Akatsuki. Taiyo would then jump back only to be hit by an explosion from Deidara, causing him to drop his sword. Breath of the Sun, secret technique, eruption. As Taiyo began to get surrounded, he put his hands on the ground and then flames erupted, burning those around him. Taiyo then quickly looked back at his friends. They weren't doing too great, and they were fighting someone super strong, Kokushibu. There was something different about his uncle. He just couldn't put his finger on it. Taiyo then noticed someone. It was Zenitsu. He was trying to tap into his true form, but he couldn't do it. But he was strong without it. Taiyo then did something that was almost unheard of. Taiyo would grab his blade, putting it back in its case, and then threw it at his friend, causing him to fall over and hit his head on a rock. This knocked him unconscious, and we see Taiyo, who then turned around to see Deidara rushing at him with 2 kunai. Taiyo let both of his hands be stabbed through, and this is when lightning was heard from behind him. Taiyo smiled as he yelled while gripping the wrist of Deidara. Breath of the Sun, secret technique, Hell's Gate. Taiyo's flames then become pure red as they cover him and Deidara. Muzan's eyes would widen as Deidara was burned to nothing. Not even his bones remained. Taiyo, however, was in very bad shape. He had scorch marks all over his body, and his clothes were burned as well. Taiyo, however, did not falter, as he turned back to see his friends who were pushing Kokushibu to his limits. This is when he saw Rengoku and Giyu pushing back some of the upper moons. Taiyo picked up his new blade, and then he began to walk away from Muzan. As Tanjiro was about to clash with Nezuko by his side, they were both stopped by the hands of Taiyo. He hugged them. "Leave right now," he said. He then yelled it out to everyone who was fighting, and they quickly kicked their opponents away and began to run away. As Taiyo looked at Tanjiro, who was looking back at him, Tanjiro whispered, "Please survive." Taiyo nodded. "It's a promise," he said with a smile. But as Tanjiro got far away, Taiyo turned his smile to a frown as he continued to say, "It's a promise that I cannot keep, my friend. I'm sorry." He then turned back to the remaining Akatsuki, Upper Moon members, and Lower Moon members, and the remaining subordinates who were alive. "You know, this is also funny," he said while looking up at the sun. "For the first time in my life, I actually feel fear of what's going to happen next. But I, the strongest Hashira alive today, will fight till the end." Kokushibu immediately remembered something from his past about this kid. He turned back to all those he considered his comrades. "We need to leave now. He's going to use a technique that'll finish us all off right now." From behind him, a flame burned his robes. As he turned around, he had to guard his own eyes. "So bright," he would say. Taiyo then stood, holding his blade, as the silhouette of a sun then appeared behind him. "I'm sorry, father. It may be incomplete, but it is now or never. Let's do this, Kurama." The nine-tailed fox from beside him nodded as it stood up. Breath of the Sun, final technique, the One. Taiyo's flames then began to burn his own body, as his muscles began to show because of his skin burning off. It's so hot, in fact, that it was burning his hair, only leaving a small amount that was still yellow. "I've only got one shot, so I'll aim for him." Taiyo then directed his gaze to Muzan, who began to back away. As Taiyo prepared the attack and let it go, Taiyo blacked out. After launching the attack, he woke up days later, somehow still alive. He thanks Kurama, who had healed him, as he sat up looking around. All the others who survived cheered, because they were sitting around a fire and he had woke up. But Taiyo only had one question. Where is Muzan? Everyone then turns to Tanjiro, who was crying. He walked over to his friend and then hugged him, handing him a blade. Taiyo stared off at the blade. After a minute, he realized whose it was. Tears then began to fall from his face as he held the blade of his father, Yoriichi. There's no way. How? How could this happen? Taiyo then touched his head as memories began to flood in. It then began to hurt. At that moment, Taiyo dove deep into his memory as he began to walk away from everyone else. Now, everything I'm about to say is Taiyo's flashback. He remembers that he launched the attack and someone hit his neck. It was Yoriichi, but the attack then missed. Taiyo was propped up against a tree, and then Yoriichi fought the battle for him. Taiyo then remembered he woke up again during the fight to see his father gracefully dodging attacks while killing off some of his opponents. Taiyo's only thought was to get up and fight, but his body wouldn't listen. Taiyo remembered looking back at his father, seeing him get hit by an attack, and then another, and another after that. Taiyo's body during the next attack that was about to hit Yoriichi jolted up and kicked his opponent away that tried to hit his father. Taiyo then killed him with his own weapon. Yoriichi would say, "God damn it, Taiyo. Can't you see I'm protecting you? Can't you see we can do this together, father?" Yoriichi smirked. "I guess I have no choice but to give in, son." The father and son then prepare for a battle that will be their last. Taiyo picked up his blade. He could remember all his bones telling him to stop, but his brain only wanted him to move forward. He wanted to crush everything that was right in front of him. Yoriichi ran in first, and Taiyo was right behind. The two were in perfect sync, as always, as they cut down man after man, both of them using breath of the sun to get closer to Muzan. During some of the fights, Taiyo flipped over his father to kill another upper moon. They were both hit by a wide-range attack after that, but Yoriichi jumped in the way in front of Taiyo to block it. They would notice that everyone had stopped fighting while looking at the two, and they were right in front of them. The two of them stood in front of Muzan, a path of pain, and Kokushibu. The three were smiling back at them, and Yoriichi looked down to see a small hole in his chest. A piece of his heart was missing. He coughed up blood as Taiyo helped him stand. He yelled out, "No. Hold on, father. I can heal you. I know Kurama can heal you." Taiyo, "Don't worry, father. I know he can do it." Taiyo, "Just sit there. I got you, father." Taiyo, Yoriichi screamed. "It's okay, my son. My time is up. So let me leave you with 3 things. First, I will leave you to the future, my son. The future of this world is in your hands. Secondly, this is the full power of that technique you tried to use." Everyone who was there watched as a flame shot high into the sky from Yoriichi. As he then slashed his blade at the retreating samurai, he killed off at least 200, and a couple powerful ones. Plus, he injured Kokushibu and Muzan. And he also burned a path of pain. Yoriichi's body then began to finally die. Taiyo ran up, hugging his father. "The last thing I will leave you with, my son, is love." Taiyo is hit again on the neck by Yoriichi, and as he fell to the ground passing out, before closing his eyes, the last thing Taiyo saw was his father's smile. End of the flashback. Taiyo kept crying as he ran all the way back up the mountain, not stopping. And then he saw it. Once reaching the top, he saw his father, who stood in the same position he he had died in, smiling. Because Yoriichi had perfected the one technique, his body didn't burn away. And Tayo decided to bury him, and after that, he prayed. Once he was done, a light from the heavens shined on the blade of Yoriichi. That makes 4 things, you idiot.